It's a simple question. How does one song, recorded by two different men, have such different fates? The man who wrote it, who lived it, who poured his soul into it had a massive hit. It was the kind of hit that should have made him a household name forever. But it didn't. Another man, a singer with a crooked smile and a nervous energy, recorded his own version just a few months later. His version became an anthem for a generation. It outsold the original by a staggering margin, maybe 10 to 1. It became one of the defining songs of a new kind of music, and of the man himself. Why? It wasn't that one version was necessarily better. The original was raw. It was authentic. It crackled with the energy of a southern bar on a Saturday night. The other version was more polished, more powerful. It was engineered for a bigger audience. But the difference in quality doesn't explain the difference in sales, not a 10 to 1 difference. The answer is more complicated. It's a story about luck, both good and bad. It's about timing. It's about the raw power of a new technology called television. And it's about the difference between a talented musician and a cultural phenomenon. To understand what happened, you have to go back to the beginning. You have to understand the man who wrote the song. His name was Carl Perkins. He was a sharecropper's son from Tennessee. He grew up picking cotton. With music was his escape. He learned to play guitar from an old Blackfield hand named John Westbrook. Uncle John taught him how to bend the strings, how to find the blues notes, how to make the guitar talk. Carl took that knowledge and mixed it with the country music he heard on the Grand Ole Opry. What came out was something new. It was energetic, it was danceable, it was rockabilly. Perkins and his brothers formed a band. They played in rough country bars and honky-tonks. They were good. They were tight. Carl had a unique guitar style and a voice that was pure country grit. He eventually made his way to Memphis to a little studio run by a man named Sam Phillips. The studio was called Sun Records. Sam Phillips was a visionary. He was looking for a new sound. He was recording black blues artists like Howlin' Wolf and B.B. King, but he knew that if he could find a white singer who could capture that same feeling, he could sell it to a bigger audience. Sam Phillips found what he was looking for in Carl Perkins. He signed him to Sun Records. Perkins had a few minor regional hits. He was building a name for himself, but he needed that one big song. The song that would break him out nationally. The idea for that song came to him one night at a dance. He saw a young man on the dance floor who was being very careful with his new shoes. The guy was getting angry at his date for stepping too close to them. Perkins heard him say something like, "Don't step on my Suedes." The line stuck with him. Later that night, he woke up and wrote the lyrics on a potato sack. The story he wrote was simple and relatable. It was about a man who didn't care if you insulted him, stole from him, or slandered his name. But there was one line you could not cross. You could do anything, but just stay off of his fancy footwear. It was a statement of pride, a declaration of identity. In a world where a poor southern boy might not have much, he had his shoes. They were a symbol of his status, his self-respect. The music he put to those words was a classic rockabilly stomp. It had a driving beat, a catchy guitar riff, and a vocal that was full of attitude. He recorded it at Sun Studio. Sam Phillips knew right away it was a hit. He told Perkins, "Carl, you've just written your masterpiece." And he was right. The record was released in early 1956. It took off like a rocket. It started climbing the country charts. Then it did something amazing. It crossed over. It started climbing the rhythm and blues charts. This was almost unheard of for a white country artist. It showed how much the song connected with different audiences. It was a genuine, organic smash hit. It was selling hundreds of thousands of copies. It was the first record on the Sun label to sell 1 million. Carl Perkins was on his way. He was about to become a major star. He was booked for a national television appearance on the Perry Como show. This was his big moment. This was the launch pad that would make him a household name across America. And then disaster struck. While driving to New York City for the television appearance, Perkins and his band were in a horrific car accident. Their car rear-ended a pickup truck. Perkins suffered a fractured skull and a broken collarbone. His brother Jay's neck was broken. The driver of the car, a friend, was killed. Carl Perkins was laid up in a hospital bed, watching his dream slip away. He was supposed to be on national television, singing his hit song to millions of people. Instead, he was in traction, unable to move, unable to promote his record at the most critical moment of his career. This is where the story takes its turn. This is where the other man comes in. His name was Elvis Presley. By 1956, Elvis was no longer the unknown truck driver who had walked into Sun Studio a couple years earlier. He was already a regional star. He had also recorded for Sam Phillips at Sun Records. In fact, he and Carl Perkins were friends. They knew each other from the studio. They respected each other's music. Elvis had a dynamic stage presence that was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. He was a force of nature. Sam Phillips knew how special Elvis was, but he also knew his small label couldn't handle an artist of that magnitude. He sold Elvis's contract to a major label, RCA Victor, for the then unheard of sum of $35,000. RCA was a corporate giant. They had money, they had distribution, they had a marketing machine that Sun Records could only dream of. They were ready to turn Elvis Presley into the biggest star in the world, and they needed songs. When Elvis moved to RCA, he was encouraged to record his own version of his friend Carl Perkins' hit song. Sam Phillips, who still had a financial stake in the publishing, also wanted Elvis to record it. He knew what Elvis could do for a song. There was no malice in it. In the 1950s, it was common for multiple artists to record versions of the same hit song. It wasn't seen as stealing in the way we might think of it today. It was just business. While Elvis was hesitant at first, he respected Carl. He knew it was Carl's song. He reportedly said, "I don't want to cut it. It's Carl's." But the pressure was on from the label, so he did it. Elvis recorded his version in New York just a few weeks after Perkins had recorded the original in Memphis. His version was different. It was faster, harder, more aggressive. The production was slicker. RCA's studio technology was more advanced than Sun's. The sound was bigger. Elvis's vocal performance was explosive. He sang it with a confidence and a swagger that was all his own. He wasn't just singing the words, he was living them. His version was less a country song with a beat and more a full-blown rock and roll assault. But the recording was only part of the equation. The real difference, the thing that created the 10-to-1 sales gap, was television. Carl Perkins was supposed to perform the song on the Perry Como show. It would have been a great opportunity, but he was in a hospital bed. Elvis Presley, on the other hand, was just beginning his conquest of television. In early 1956, he appeared on the Dorsey Brothers' stage show. He performed the song about the shoes, and America was not ready for what it saw. It's hard to overstate the impact of these early television performances. Radio was one thing. You could hear the music, but television was something else entirely. You could see the performer, and seeing Elvis was a revelation. He wasn't just standing there singing. He was moving. He was gyrating his hips. He was snarling his lip. He was channeling a raw, untamed energy that was both thrilling and dangerous. Parents were horrified. Teenagers were mesmerized. He performed the song multiple times on national television. Each performance was an event. Each one sold more records. While Carl Perkins was recovering from his injuries, Elvis was in millions of American living rooms performing Carl's song. For a huge portion of the country, Elvis's version was the first one they ever heard. To them, it wasn't a cover. It was an Elvis song. The machinery of RCA kicked into high gear. They pressed millions of copies of the record. They got it into every record store in every corner of the country. Sun Records, for all its heart and soul, was a small, independent label. They simply couldn't compete with that kind of distribution and promotion. They had a hit on their hands with Perkins' version, a massive one. But RCA had a cultural earthquake on their hands with Elvis's version. Perkins' record was a #1 hit on the country charts. It was a #2 hit on the pop charts. This was a phenomenal success. It sold over 1 million copies. By any measure, it was a career-making song. But Elvis's version was a different kind of animal. It was part of his first album for RCA, which became the first rock and roll album to ever top the Billboard charts. The song itself became a top 20 pop hit, but its sales were tied to the album's monumental success and to Elvis's overall explosion into the public consciousness. So you had a collision of factors. First, you had Carl Perkins' terrible, tragic luck. The car crash happened at the worst possible moment. It robbed him of his momentum. It took him out of the public eye right when he needed to be in it the most. He eventually recovered and even appeared on the Perry Como show months later, but by then the moment had passed. The cultural conversation had moved on. Second, you had Elvis Presley's perfect timing and unstoppable charisma. He was a rocket ship on the launch pad. He had the looks, the voice, and the moves. He was the right person at the right time to bring this new music to the mainstream. The song about the shoes was the perfect vehicle for his rebellious image. Third, you had the power of a major record label. RCA's marketing and distribution muscle put the song in front of a much larger audience than Sun Records ever could. They understood. They weren't just selling a record, they were selling a personality, an icon. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, you had television. Television was the kingmaker. It bypassed the traditional gatekeepers of radio and print media. It beamed a performer's image and energy directly into people's homes. Carl Perkins missed his shot at television. Elvis Presley seized his and became the first and biggest star of the television age. He showed people what rock and roll looked like, and it was exciting and a little bit dangerous. There was no bad guy in this story. Carl Perkins and Elvis Presley remained friends. Elvis always gave Carl credit. He knew where the song came from. Whenever he was asked about it, he would say, "That's Carl's song." Whereas Perkins, for his part, was philosophical about it. He was grateful for the success he had. The royalties from the song, including Elvis's version, provided him with a comfortable living for the rest of his life. But he always wondered what might have been. What if he hadn't been in that car accident? What if he had been the one to perform the song on national television? We'll never know. What we do know is that Carl Perkins wrote a perfect rock and roll song. It was a brilliant piece of songwriting that captured a specific attitude and feeling. It was authentic and clever. His own recording of it is a classic, a foundational text of rockabilly music. But Elvis Presley took that song and turned it into something else. He made it a global anthem. He used it as a launching pad for a career that would change the face of popular culture. His performance of the song wasn't just about the music, it was a cultural statement. It was the sound of a new generation announcing its arrival. So why did Elvis's version outsell the original so dramatically? It was a combination of things. It was a tragic accident, it was a corporate machine, it was a new technology, and it was the once-in-a-lifetime magnetism of a young man from Tupelo, Mississippi. Carl Perkins wrote the script, but Elvis Presley was the one who got to deliver the lines on the world's biggest stage, under the brightest lights. The song, of course, was Blue Suede Shoes.